to watch. Now, taking this one step further, when we're holding, again, we're going to hold this US Canadian down here, and we're going to look at other multiple indicators or other markets, excuse me, from VantagePoint to look at the correlation and the likelihood of whether this is going to continue. Now, another key one is New York light crude. We can see here, again, a very high correlation. By using these multiple markets, we're using the equity markets, the commodity markets, the futures markets. We're using all of this to forecast looking at this US-Canadian pair. The US-Canadian pair is moving lower. We can see that the New York light crude is continuing to move higher. So again, very important that all of these things are considered. So this looks like that the light crude is getting ready to break higher. This suggests that US-Canada has much further downside potential. So again, it's very important that we're not just looking at single market analysis. Even if we're using the VantagePoint software, it's very good to look at these other markets because they certainly are leading indicators. Now, if we were to look at US-Canada, notoriously over the last 2 years, again, has had a very high correlation to the equity markets. So if we're pulling up the S&P 500, we can see that these charts, this suggests that there is the potential for the S&P 500 to move higher as US-Canada moves lower. Now, again, the correlation has been probably 90% over the last 2 years. We're looking for a break in this correlation, and by using the software, the VantagePoint software exclusively, we can see if that's actually something that's going to take place. So again, multiple markets, even in VantagePoint, to forecast a single market is a very, very wise thing to consider. So again, looking at the other pairs, we're going to have a quick look back here at the Forex market. Now, the reason I've got the FXCM platform, trading platform up here is because it allows CFDs. Now, unfortunately, U.S. clients are not allowed to trade CFDs with the FXCM UK, but they are allowed to trade currencies. So the forecast for today's trade in gold, this thing is just absolutely screaming higher. We got that early warning sign for VantagePoint. We're now actually hitting the 1120 mark. I think I was forecasting the 1125 to 1130 area today. We can see that Euro-US is now moving aggressively higher. We can also take it one step further from the live perspective. I can actually swing this over so everybody can see this. The S&P 500 is now sitting there holding at that 1100 mark. So very interesting as to what's happening here. So with Euro-US, just during the course of this presentation, has moved from 135.80 area all the way up to 136.50 where it currently is now. Now this represents potentially a very good entry point for a short position. Now, do we have to put all of our trade into this one single position, like all our money down on this? Absolutely not. We would, because we've identified we have that wide price gap all the way up to the 138.20 area, we may enter into small positions here. And then maybe as it goes up higher, we can add up another position. So there's a number of different ways that this can be played. But primarily what we're doing here is we're identifying using the VantagePoint software that we want to use any strength to set shorts, and we want to be very cautious about buying Euro-US when it's down lower simply because it's so low. VantagePoint again is very clearly forecasting the outlook on the Euro-US. Now, again, I'm going to very quickly recap because, you know, certainly if anybody has, I want to thank everybody for emails and everything that I get in. If you have a certain currency that you'd like to see in a presentation, I can certainly do that. Now, again, to point out the fact with this Euro-US, the actual main signal from VantagePoint here came at the looking at this, it came at 149.80, 150. We're now trading at 136. That's, you know, that's 1,400 plus pips. That's on a single contract. That's a lot of money. That's, you know, $14,000. That's a very good trade. So, but what I really want to point out here is that we have retracements in this downtrend, but VantagePoint has been forecasting a move lower since the end of November on the Euro-US currency pair. So with that, this is why I'm stressing to be very, very cautious about buying when it's down low, thinking that it won't go lower, because to be perfectly honest, I've seen and heard it all before where, you know, it hit this 144 level and everybody said, nope, that's it, Euro-US is going back to 160. It was just a correction in the uptrend, and an actual VantagePoint was had a completely different view of this. Now, one of the reasons I use VantagePoint as my sole indicators is because it's truly a thinking machine. It doesn't have an opinion. Market analysts, even including myself and other people, they have opinions, and this software does not. It simply calculates based on what's happening with the other markets and forecasts based on that. It has no bias up, it has no bias down. It simply forecasts based on the financial information that's fed into it. So with that said, now I think I'm running a little over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch this over and take some questions. If somebody has some questions on what we've talked about today, I would certainly be happy to answer those. I've got a question up here from Billy Bob Joe. You looked at financials. How about soybeans? I still remain that the soybean contracts are going to continue to move higher. I originally forecasted that last week. That's been going quite well. It's continuing to move higher. Is it overbought? Maybe a little bit, but I don't think. I think it has plenty of room to extend. So, but again, it's always important to take into consideration, when something becomes overbought, it's going to, likely correct. Now, yeah, Billy Bob, he's asking if so, can I see the chart? Yes, the chart is up if you want to look. I'm not going to go back into the other presentations because we're in the question and answer section of this, but you can see that on Tuesday's recommended trade. The chart will be pulled up there, but I can certainly work the soybeans into the next presentation, or we can look at that in another presentation. Not a problem, Billy Bob. Now just waiting here to see if we have any other questions on the presentation. Pinkerton, what do you think about the Euro-US in a longer perspective, deal or no deal for Greece? Great question, Pinkerton. Here's my view on this, and that's why I actually specifically worked that into that presentation. My view is that it's likely to head lower. The forecast that we got from VantagePoint very clearly showed this thing in a downtrend long before the equity sold off, long before Greece and everything else. And the reality is it's very difficult to predict what's going to happen with Greece.